I'm going to say this once, slowly, because speed is how they hide things. At 4:07 a.m., while the city was asleep and the screens were still pretending nothing was wrong, a calendar invite quietly disappeared from a Federal Reserve server. No cancellation notice. No reschedule. Just gone. The meeting still happened. It always does. They just stopped pretending you were supposed to know about it. By 4:19, the air on the trading floor changed. You only notice it if you've lived there long enough. The hum drops half a tone. Keyboards slow. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Not panic. Recognition. The kind that dries your mouth before your brain catches up. This wasn't about rates. It wasn't about inflation targets. It wasn't about employment. Those are the stories. This was about the thing they never say out loud anymore. Settlement. Final settlement. What happens when the dollar stops clearing without force? The document that circulated afterward wasn't marked classified. It didn't need to be. It was labeled Framework Alignment 2026 Transition. No logo, no signatures. Just distribution codes and a footer reference to an internal session held at 5:30 a.m., sub-basement level, no devices permitted. You won't find it on FOIA requests. I tried. It doesn't exist in the way your world understands existence. Here's what made people sit back in their chairs. Platinum, silver, not gold. Gold is already too loud, too political, too obvious. Central banks have been hoarding it for years in plain sight. Gold is the anchor everyone expects, which makes it useless for the next move. The reset doesn't come from what people are watching. It comes from what they dismissed as secondary. Silver and platinum are not monetary metals in the modern narrative. They are industrial, which is exactly why they were chosen. This is the anatomy of the leak. The dollar does not die in a fireball. It erodes under paperwork, under revised collateral frameworks, under temporary settlement facilities that become permanent because reversing them would cause immediate failure. The meeting wasn't about replacing the dollar as a unit of account. It was about replacing it as the final arbiter of trust. The phrase used was multi-vector settlement integrity. That's bureaucratic language, for one thing. The dollar can no longer carry the entire system on its back without cracking. Foreign counterparties don't trust it. Domestic institutions don't want to fund it. The bond market has been screaming this for months, but nobody listens to bonds anymore. Bonds are inconvenient. Bonds don't cheer. Bonds don't clap when equities hit all-time highs. Bonds just sit there and refuse to confirm the rally. And when bonds refuse to confirm, the system looks for something else that settles without belief. Silver clears industry. Platinum clears energy and catalysts. Both clear globally. Both are scarce. Both are impossible to print. And most importantly, both already sit inside existing industrial supply chains. No new infrastructure required. No new treaties. No announcements. That's the elegance of it. One of the slides in the meeting showed a stress matrix. Dollar-only settlement on the left. Multi-asset settlement on the right. Under moderate stress, the dollar column went yellow. Under severe stress, red. The alternative column stayed green far longer. Not because it was stronger, because it was smaller, less trusted, less used, less exposed. That's how systems survive. By shifting load to components no one notices. Now the logic that should terrify you. Banks don't need the public to use silver or platinum as money. They only need them at the interbank and sovereign level. Once clearing begins there, everything else reprices downstream. Quietly, mechanically, without debate. This is why you're seeing behavior that makes no sense if you still believe the old story. Platinum inventories draining while price stays asleep. Silver lease rates doing things they shouldn't be doing in a healthy market. Paper volume exploding while physical availability contracts. That's not speculation, that's preparation. The feedback loop is already in motion. As trust in dollar settlement weakens, counterparties demand collateral that doesn't depend on political goodwill. That increases demand for physical metals. Increased demand tightens supply. Tight supply raises the internal settlement value, not the screen price. That discrepancy forces margin adjustments. Margin adjustments force liquidations elsewhere, which weakens trust further, round and round. You don't hear about this because it doesn't show up on CPI. It shows up in clearing memos and delivery schedules. One of the risk managers in the room asked the obvious question: what happens when the public notices? The answer was not comforting. They don't need to. That was the exact wording. This isn't a currency replacement, it's a bypass. A parallel nervous system built underneath the one you still think is alive. By the time headlines catch up, the critical arteries will already be rerouted. This is why silver matters more than gold in this phase. Silver breaks first. It's too small, too leveraged, too abused by paper markets. When silver fails to clear, everything above it panics quietly. And platinum? Platinum is the bridge. Energy, hydrogen, catalysts, defense. Platinum doesn't belong to retail narratives, it belongs to governments and supply chains, which makes it perfect. If this sounds insane, good. It means you haven't been anesthetized yet. Because here's the part that made me stop trusting the timeline. 2026 wasn't presented as a goal. It was presented as a contingency already assumed. The language wasn't if, it was when. When liquidity fractures, when dollar collateral faces simultaneous foreign and domestic stress, when bonds stop pretending. The reset is not a switch, it's a drift. One morning you wake up and certain trades clear differently. Certain counterparties demand different terms. Certain assets are suddenly preferred. No announcement, no vote, just change rules. And the dollar? The dollar keeps circulating. You still get paid. You still shop. You still swipe. That's how compliance is maintained. The illusion of continuity is the most powerful control mechanism ever invented. But behind the curtain, the system stops trusting its own shadow. This is not a conspiracy. Conspiracies require coordination. This is adaptation, survival math. The people who attended that meeting don't think in moral categories. They think in failure probabilities. And the probability of maintaining a dollar-only settlement regime through the next shock is no longer acceptable. So they hedged the system, not with speeches, with metal. And this is why the behavior feels inverted. Why the screen tells you nothing is happening while the infrastructure screams. Why the market looks calm while the foundation shifts. If you're waiting for confirmation, you're already late. Confirmation is for historians. This phase belongs to those who understand that money is not what you use. It's what settles when nobody trusts anyone else. And silver and platinum settle without permission. I'm stopping here because the next part isn't about what they're doing. It's about what happens to people who don't understand what's already in motion. And that's heavier. And here the road splits into 3 paths, and every one of them leads toward the same gravity well. Not because someone planned it that way, but because systems under stress only know how to shed load, reroute pressure, and preserve the core. The illusion of choice is maintained for as long as it keeps behavior orderly. After that, the illusion is no longer required. The first path is the one they will sell you as continuity. The version where nothing breaks, because breaking would imply responsibility. In this path, the dollar remains the unit you use, but it stops being the unit that settles risk. Quietly, almost politely, settlement begins to prefer things that don't argue. Metals that don't tweet. Inputs that don't need permission. Silver and platinum don't replace the dollar on your receipt. They replace it in the basement, where trades actually die or survive. The public never votes on this. It happens through amended collateral schedules, revised haircuts, and a new class of temporary facilities that never expire, because removing them would trigger a cascade no one wants to own. In this version, markets appear to function. Volatility spikes are brief and explained away. Equities recover on cue. The bond market stays tense but contained, yields refusing to confirm optimism while never quite forcing a reckoning. The system buys time by shifting settlement risk into channels no one tracks. This is the optimistic story. It works as long as physical supply can be rationed without being named as such, and as long as counterparties accept that preferred collateral is not the same thing as required, even when it is. Then the road curves, and the second path reveals itself, the realistic one. Here, preference hardens into practice. Counterparties begin to insist, not request. Settlement windows narrow. Delivery terms change, not publicly, internally. The dollar is still used everywhere you can see, but behind the scenes, it is treated as a claim that needs reinforcement. Silver clears industrial chains that can't stop. Platinum clears energy and defense flows that won't wait. The system doesn't announce a reset, it enacts one, piece by piece, under the language of resilience. In this path, behavior shifts before price does. Companies hedge access instead of cost. Banks stop offering products that require them to stand between paper and metal. Lease rates whisper what spot prices are forbidden to say. Inventories drain without explanation. When questioned, officials say supply chains are normal. They are not lying. They are narrowing the definition of normal. You feel this version before you understand it. Quotes take longer. Confirmations require more steps. Relationships matter again. The market becomes a series of permissions layered over scarcity. Nothing explodes, but nothing is truly liquid either. This is where people realize that money can circulate while trust recedes, and that settlement is the last place where truth is allowed to surface. And then there is the third path, the one no one rehearses in public because it punishes hesitation. This is where a shock arrives that cannot be smoothed with facilities or language. A funding market seizes. A sovereign counterparty refuses rollover without non-dollar collateral. A delivery failure forces a choice that had been deferred too long. In this path, the abstraction cracks. Paper reprices violently downward for a moment, not because metals lose value, but because forced liquidation overwhelms screens. Physical premiums detach entirely. Dealers stop quoting. Clearing rules change midstream, not to save fairness, but to save continuity. This is where panic finally shows itself, not as noise, but as motion. Requests stack. Transfers queue. Everyone learns at once that settlement has priorities, and they are not equal. The dollar continues to circulate because it must. Daily life depends on it. But finality moves elsewhere. Quietly, without ceremony. The reset completes not with a bang, but with a new set of defaults no one remembers agreeing to. Do not look for clarity in announcements. Clarity is a luxury system's forfeit under load. If you want to know which path you are on, stop watching speeches and start watching friction. Do not watch prices alone. Watch yields that refuse to cooperate. When long rates stay elevated during rallies, capital is not convinced, it is constrained. Watch funding windows. When institutions choose official facilities over private markets, trust has already been rationed. Watch inventory cadence. When updates slow, categories blur, and definitions change, supply is being protected. Language always softens before access does. Do not watch what elites say. Watch what they stop doing. When boards authorize asset movements that make no sense for return, but perfect sense for continuity. When executives avoid exposure that once looked harmless. When public enthusiasm fades into procedural silence. These are the markers that matter, and above all, watch delivery. When fulfillment becomes discouraged without being denied, you are no longer negotiating price. You are negotiating permission. So what do you do when the horizon looks like this? You do not chase the narrative. Narratives are designed to synchronize you with everyone else. Synchronization is the enemy when systems ration. You do not wait for confirmation. Confirmation is the reward given to those who arrive after options have narrowed. You act on structure, not sentiment. Physical metal is not a bet on upside here. It is a refusal to accept substitution. It is the decision to hold something that settles without persuasion. Gold matters because it always has. Silver matters because it breaks first. Platinum matters because it clears the arteries no one can shut down. You do not need to announce this to yourself as an ideology. You need to treat it as insurance against a world where promises are honored selectively. Cash still matters, but only as a tool for time. Time to wait, time to decide, time to say no. Cash trapped inside systems that can redefine access is not time, it is another claim. The goal is not to hoard, but to maintain mobility. Mobility is freedom in a rationed world. Reduce complexity. Every additional layer is a point of control you do not own. Every dependency is a lever someone else can pull. Simplify until you can explain your position without a footnote. If you cannot explain how something settles under stress, you do not own it, you rent it. Resist urgency. Urgency is how consent is extracted when rules change. Volatility will be used to rush you. Stories will be used to herd you. Remember that the system rewards speed in good times and punishes it in bad ones. Slowness, when chosen, is an advantage. And then there is the part people avoid, because it sounds philosophical until it isn't. The right to say no is the only hedge that survives a reset. No to forced substitutions. No to revised terms presented as favors. No to explanations that arrive after access has been restricted. No to being rushed into compliance by fear of missing out. Saying no does not mean leaving the world. It means refusing to trade autonomy for convenience when scarcity appears. Responsibility is heavy because it removes excuses. Once you see how settlement actually works, you lose the comfort of pretending you didn't know. That weight stays with you. It should. It is the cost of remaining a participant rather than a passenger. The people who navigate this horizon will not look prophetic. They will look dull. They will have moved before urgency. They will have accepted lower performance to preserve optionality. They will have treated money not as an identity, but as a function that fails under stress. The reset is not a proclamation. It is a migration. It happens while you are distracted by prices and performances. It completes when enough risk has been rerouted that reversing it would cause more damage than continuing. You are still early enough to choose how you stand. Not what you predict, how you stand. Because when the system finally asks for compliance instead of belief, the only people who keep their freedom are the ones who practice saying no while saying no was still cheap.